Hello everyone, my name is Dave Wisniewski. I'm the founder and chairman of Safer Arizona Cannabis Legalization Political Action Committee. And I've been asked by a lot of people to share my story of how I started Safer Arizona and how this whole thing kind of came to be. So without further ado, the story starts when I was in 5th grade, as a matter of fact. That was the first time I had the DARE program. Now, DARE stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education, and the point of it is supposed to teach kids the dangers of doing drugs and how to avoid becoming a drug addict. And my first DARE class was the 5th grade, and they told me things about marijuana. They told me that marijuana caused brain cancer, it caused lung cancer. They told me it caused diseases, and then it was a gateway to a surefire heroin or meth addiction. So I believed it. I was in 5th grade, that's what they told me. I thought marijuana was a gateway drug. I thought it had all these horrible bad things wrong with it. Now on to 6th grade. 6th grade I had the DARE program again, but this time it was a little bit different. My uncle, who was a local police officer, just so happened to be my DARE officer, so it was kind of cool to have my uncle as a DARE officer. But besides that, they taught me the same kinds of things again. Marijuana was a gateway drug to a meth and heroin addiction. It caused brain cancer, it caused lung cancer, and it caused disease and stuff like that. And I believed it, again, in 6th grade. Then I went on to 7th grade, and then in between 7th and 8th grade, I was in California with my brother. And he was about 5 years older than me, and he smoked marijuana. I was in his room, and he said, I'm gonna smoke this, I hope you don't mind. And I was 13 at the time. I just turned 13, and I was looking at him. I'm like, well, has anybody ever died from an overdose? I probably didn't say it like that. I probably said it like with a miniature voice. But he says no, and I'm like, all right, well, I want to try some. If it's not killing anybody, let's see what the big fuss is all about. So I tried marijuana for the first time when I was 13, and I didn't get high the first time. I had to smoke it again with my brother a couple more times, and I ended up getting high. Then that was the beginning of my, adventures exploring the cannabis world. When I was in 8th grade and my freshman year of high school, I tried, getting pot, but I was always getting ripped off by people. People were selling me like oregano. I didn't know what it really was. Sometimes I smoked oregano once when I was in high school. I was young. Well, anyways, I didn't really get into smoking pot until I was a sophomore in high school. And that was about the time I was a habitual marijuana user. It was almost every day. I was one of those stoner kids. And so it goes on until I'm 17 years old. I'm about to graduate, and I'm sitting on the intersection of Ash and 5th by Mill Avenue, smoking weed in my truck with a couple of friends, and one of my friends opens his passenger side door and lets all the smoke out. Just as bicycle cops are riding by, they smell it, and then I'm loading the bowl, and I see the beam of light from a flashlight, and I look up, it's a cop just watching me load a bowl. And I'm just like, all right, give up, So I get arrested that night for possession of marijuana and the possession of the pipe. I'm looking at 2 felonies at that point in time. Both my parents were in Tucson, and so the police called my parents because I was 17. I was still a minor, and since they were in Tucson, they gave the other kids' parents permission to take me with them until my parents can come get me. So 17 years old, looking at 2 felonies. About 2 weeks later, I turned 18 years old. And you'd think, getting arrested, looking at 2 felonies, you'd stop smoking weed, but I didn't. I was still smoking weed right after that, and then I ended up getting arrested again 2 weeks later. But this time it was a little bit different. I was at a buddy's house, and he told me he was being watched by undercover cops because he was selling a lot of cocaine. I didn't think a whole lot of it at the time. I didn't do cocaine. I'm not a cocaine dealer. I'm here smoking pot. What do I care? But wrong idea. And so I'm leaving that guy's house, and like 30 seconds, maybe a couple minutes after I leave, I'm being pulled over by an undercover envoy. And I'm just like, oh crap. So I got weed in my hand, I stick it in my sock, and I got a bubbler, and I stick it in the port of my subwoofer trying to hide it. I was scared, and some rookie comes up to my cop, and he seems kind of nervous. I'm kind of nervous too. I don't know what's going on. And he tries telling me it's a routine traffic stop, but he's shortly pushed away by some other guy who's he looked like Dog the Bounty Hunter. It was another cop. He had a ponytail, a goatee, a really tight black shirt, and he was wearing his badge on a dog chain necklace, like in the army. So this guy, he was looking all tough, and he's trying to tell me it was some sort of drug routine traffic stop, and he needs to talk to me and my friend separately. Meanwhile, the third person who was in my vehicle is already in handcuffs, and I'm just like, what's going on with Will? And long story short, I get arrested again. I get scared into admitting that I had a bubbler and the weed in my sock. They charge me with the weed in my sock, but they don't charge me with the bubbler. And so they take me to jail. They start in processing me, and I'm scared. I'm like, I was just arrested 2 weeks ago. This is my third felony in 2 weeks. I haven't done anything bad in my life, really. And I'm looking at becoming a triple felon. What's going to happen? And the cops are like, you're going to jail, man. You're going to jail. And then they're looking at the weed that I have, and they're like, you're not even getting caught with the good shit, and you're going to jail. And I'm like, well, thanks, man. I'm going to jail for some dirt weed. Thanks for making me feel great, you know? So, they're like, well, there is a way for you to get this one off your record. I'm like, well, what do I got to do? So they pull me over in some other secret room, and they're like, we need you to narc someone out. I'm thinking, okay, I'm looking at 3 felonies. Maybe there's somebody that who's not looking at 3 felonies that can get just one who I don't care about. I'm ashamed now for thinking that I could have done that at that point in time, but I was under a lot of stress and I was scared, and fortunately I didn't go through with it. This is what happened. So they're sitting here telling me, you got to narc somebody out. And I'm like, okay, so what do I got to do? And they said, I have to buy a pound of weed. And then the person who I buy a pound from is going to end up going down. And I'm like, okay, I buy nickels and dimes, I get arrested back to back, and then you're going to want me to go seeking a pound. That looks really bad. No one's going to buy that I'm just seeking a pound. Everyone's going to look, this guy's shady. So I'm like, you know what? I just didn't call the cops back, and I left it at that. But they didn't leave it at that. They ended up putting another felony warrant out for my arrest. And so I was going to Panda Express one day, and I ended up getting picked up for my license plate not being illuminated. And I ended up getting arrested again for the felony warrant. I ended up going to court that night, spent the night in jail. Because I got arrested twice before my first court date, they ended up rolling both incidences into one incident. So they put me in the task program. I was in task for 6 months. I was being drug tested every week. I had to pay for all the drug tests. I had to do 50-something hours of community service, pay about $1,500 in fines. There's a lot of family hardship, and it was just a really stressful situation on myself and everyone, emotionally and financially. And after all said and done, I was, teetling on the edge of becoming a felon. And I say teetling because I didn't actually quit smoking weed when I was in task. I just had a very elaborate clockwork system so I could smoke during certain days, and then other days I would use a cleansing cocktail. So even the drug diversion program didn't stop me from smoking pot. And they were trying to make me into a felon for that stuff. So I eventually get the charges dismissed with prejudice. And what that means is that civilians can look at your record and they don't see it, but when the federal government looks at your record, they'll still see it. So I did try to get into the military. The Air Force rejected me because I had gotten arrested for marijuana. Even though they were dismissed, they still saw it. The Navy rejected me. Even the Army rejected me right off the bat. And the way I actually got in to the Army was through a backdoor program through the Army National Guard called the Active Duty First Program. Normally when you enlist in the Army for 4 years, you do 4 years active duty and 4 years inactive reserve, which means you're a civilian for this period of time, and they can call you back if there's a huge war, but you're really out of the Army, you're a civilian inactive reserve. But my program was 4 years active Army and 4 years Arizona Army National Guard. And the difference there is the National Guard, you still do the 1 week in a month training, 2 weeks a year training, and you deploy to Iraq and Afghanistan just as much as the active duty Army. So that was the program I had to do, was the active duty first. 4 years active and 4 years National Guard. So eventually I end up in Iraq, which is a big melting pot of a whole lot of people from all over the world, and you have a lot of different conversations. I was talking to some military police officers about marijuana and told them all the different things I had gone through, and they're telling me, well, you know, in California, marijuana is a possession's a ticket or a fine. And I'm just like, are you kidding me? You're getting a ticket. You're getting a fine. And they tried to destroy my future over this. I had to go through so much crap over this, and I barely got it off. And even after I got it off, it followed me around. And you're telling me you don't even get arrested, you don't even get a criminal record, and you're a couple 100 miles left? I started tripping out. I'm like, what does California know that Arizona doesn't know? Why are they getting off so easy, and we're over here getting sent to prison? You know, because I thought that I got off easy. I'm like, okay, I didn't become a triple felon. You know, I went through all this crap because other people have it so much worse. And other people do have it so much worse. But other people had it so much better, and I didn't understand why. So then I started researching marijuana, the history of cannabis prohibition, and then I discovered the truth. I found out the whole thing was a fraud from the beginning, and that we're sitting here in some sort of huge oppression that we're trying to emerge from. That, along with a few other things I found out when I was over in Iraq, that really put a bad taste in my mouth for being in the federal government as an employee. I started feeling guilty. I was feeling on the wrong side. I'm like, I'm on the side of the people who are oppressing the people that I love over this plant that should not only be legalized, but it needs to be given to people who are dying and saving people's lives. So the research continued. I spent a year of my life in Iraq. We had a lot of downtime, and I was thinking I was going to eventually deploy again because I had that National Guard time afterwards. And so part of my contract says that, you know, I could do that National Guard time, or I can re-enlist and stay in active duty longer, and it would replace that National Guard time. So I'm thinking, okay, if I'm going to probably end up deploying again anyways, maybe I should just re-enlist for a duty station where they're actually making some progress in the cannabis reform, community. And so I was on Facebook and I saw a picture of a billboard in Washington on the I-5. And the billboard said, "Drug dealers don't ID," and it had a picture of Washington with a fat leaf right over Tacoma. And I'm like, I'm going to re-enlist to go there. Those guys in Washington, they have a movement, they have a billboard. You know, we don't have a billboard. You know, that's a lot more than anything we had. So I re-enlisted to go to Fort Lewis, Tacoma, Washington. And when I get there, I started mingling with the local activist groups. And I met an activist out there. His name was Jared Alloway. And he was with an organization collecting signatures to get legalization on the 2011 election ballot. That year they didn't get enough signatures, but I was able to go see them at a march. I was able to observe them and see how they operated. They were collecting signatures for a petition, and they were protesting in the streets. They had signs, they had banners, and they were getting the community riled up at events. And that was something I hadn't seen in Arizona, at least not in pertaining to cannabis law reform. So they don't get the initiative on the 2011 ballot. They try again in 2012, and they're trying to push hard for a people's initiative, but then this big money bags new approach Washington comes in and undermines the grassroots legalization effort with a really bad legalization initiative. But since Washington wanted to legalize so much, they all voted yes for legalization without reading the 72-page or 70-something page initiative, and they gave themselves a bad initiative where the only thing that is legal in Washington is 1 ounce of store-bought marijuana. 29 grams to 39 grams is a misdemeanor, and 40 grams and over is still a felony. So it's not really legalization. It's more of just like they kind of legalized a small corner of it, and that's it. Everything else, people are still getting arrested. So Jared had started a new campaign called Real Legalization, an effort to educate people about this bad law and trying to change it. He had also started this organization called safershirts.org, where he took these t-shirts and stenciled the words, "Marijuana is safer than alcohol." And he sent them all over the world, all over the country. This t-shirt was inspired by a book called "Marijuana is Safer, Why Are We Driving People to Drink" by Mason Tvert, and a few other artists. I don't know their names at this point. So Jared's sending these shirts out to people that say marijuana is safer than alcohol. Well, about halfway through 2012, I get orders to South Korea. And I go to South Korea December 1st, 2012. Shortly after I get there, Jared sends me a red safer shirt, marijuana safer than alcohol. Then I go home on my mid-tour leave. It's 2 weeks long, but before I go to Arizona, I stop in California for a concert. It's a music festival called Coachella. Coachella is like 80,000 people. It's really awesome. It's 3 days long. Whole bunch of different genres of music all playing at different stages at the same time. So it's kind of wild. And I was there wearing my safer shirt, and when I wore it there, it was like a gravitron of energy. Everywhere I was going, people were giving me high fives, saying, "You're so right, I agree with your shirt." People were taking pictures of me. They were taking pictures with me, all because I was wearing an awesome power shirt. It was the shirt, it said the truth. That was the biggest thing that people loved about it, is they are happy to see someone saying it, and they agree. They're excited to see the shirt, and they want one. And so shortly after that, I get back to Arizona, and I'm like, I just had this great experience at Coachella. Everyone loved this shirt. It was so awesome. And people even in Arizona love it. But I don't see anybody else protesting for cannabis legalization. I've seen normal, they have their meetings, but I didn't see them doing anything political. And I didn't, I didn't see the protesting that I would expect to see when you're trying to end prohibition. So I was thinking at that time I wanted to start a protest group, specifically just a protest, and I was going to call it Safer Arizona. The idea was that I was just going to send these safer shirts out to people, just the same way Jared was, and try to get people to go out in public, take pictures of themselves wearing it, put it on the internet so their friends can see the message written on their shirt. So I wanted to do this, but I was thinking I was going to wait till after I got out of the Army. Because, I mean, I was in the Army. I was a sergeant, E5. I had soldiers underneath me. I was in charge of training, war fighters. So I go back to South Korea, and, at this point in time, I was really against war. I'd understood that it was more about contractors and collecting third world countries' resources rather than it actually being about preserving our freedoms. And then in reality, we're in more of a surveillance state and less freedoms than any other time before, in a lot of different manners of speaking. And I didn't like what I saw, especially seeing how we call ourselves the land of the free, try to pride ourselves on that name, but then we have the largest prison population on the planet. Those kinds of things didn't sit well with me as someone claiming to protect those freedoms, so I felt guilty not actually doing what I said I would do. So I had set out to get out of the military so I could go out and try to protect those freedoms. But that's what I had in mind, but the actual action hadn't taken place until a significant event. Shortly after I'd gotten back to South Korea from leave, I went to what they call a safety briefing, where your command sergeant major gives safety advice to your entire battalion, which is about 1,000 people. Normally they go over things like don't drink and drive, practice safe sex, don't beat your wife, don't beat your dog. Well, this specific time, my sergeant major said, we need to watch our soldiers. We need to look out for this drink called purgatory vodka. If you see your soldier with purgatory vodka, you need to give them an Article 15. That's Uniform Code of Military Justice. And I don't know if you know what an Article 15 can do to someone, but you can lose money, you can have to work extra duty, it can end up getting you kicked out of the Army with a general discharge, and you'll end up losing your GI educational benefits, your VA loan benefits. You can lose all your benefits and get a stain on your record for the rest of your life for getting kicked out of the Army with Uniform Code of Military Justice. And my command sergeant major was saying we need to prosecute our soldiers under this code for soldiers who drink purgatory vodka. Why? Because purgatory vodka was infused with hemp seed oil. And then when I heard that, I started flipping out. I'm like, did he just say hemp seed oil? He said, because hemp seed oil is related to marijuana, and that stuff's bad for you. And I was just like, Did anybody else hear that? Just tripping out. My veins were like pulsating. I was tripping out. And I was thinking I was going to make a scene right there in front of 1,000 soldiers, you know, just call the guy a liar at the time, but I didn't know how that would play out. So I channeled my frustration towards my computer. I created the Facebook page, Safer Arizona. And I decided, since I was living in the barracks, I was making money as a sergeant, I had really not a whole lot of bills. I was going to buy a whole bunch of t-shirts and start sending them out to people in Arizona for free. And hopefully they'll wear these t-shirts and take pictures of themselves so I can put it on my Facebook page, Safer Arizona. So I contacted Jared, with Jared all the way. He got me my first box of shirts. I had friends in Arizona who were down to send shirts out to other people if I sent them there. So I had the pipelines set up from South Korea. I was just facilitating it, you know, through Facebook emails and stuff like that. And I started off, and I was looking for an audience that was pro-cannabis but local in Arizona. And the way I found that was I went to the Arizona Medical Marijuana Program Facebook page, and they had about 5,000 likes on that page. And so if you go to their pictures, you can see the people who liked their pictures, and you have the opportunity to friend request them. For some reason I couldn't say that. Anyways, so that was my Arizona audience that was pro-cannabis, and so I just started friend requesting them one at a time. Now eventually Facebook got upset and blocked me, and I was in Facebook jail a lot of the time. I had to take breaks, but it was effective. I was getting cannabis Arizona supporters, and once they friend requested me, I would send them all a blanket message, a personal message, that would say, hey, thank you for friend requesting me. My name is Dave. I'm contacting you because I saw your activity on the Arizona Medical Marijuana Facebook page. I'm a diehard activist. My friends and I are starting this protest group called Safer Arizona. We want to send you out this shirt as long as you just, that says marijuana is safer than alcohol. You don't have to pay for it. We send it to you for free. All we ask is that you take a picture of yourself wearing it outside in public so I can post it from our Facebook page and help promote the cause that way. And people were like, oh, that sounds like a cool idea, yeah. And what really helped was I'm like, look, people in Washington are already doing it. We're just trying to do it here in Arizona. So I started getting a following of people wanting just to wear these shirts. And I was sending them out to people in all over Arizona. And so once I got this following, I remembered, you know, in Washington, they were collecting signatures for a petition. So I was thinking maybe there could be a petition in Arizona that I don't know about, and I want to see if maybe these guys who are already wearing these t-shirts could collect some signatures too. So I contacted the only activist group I knew about, which was Phoenix Normal. And they told me that there was a man named Dennis Bohkle who was about a month away from filing a legalization initiative. And so I got a hold of Dennis, and what I had learned was a shock that he was not getting the support of Normal and the cannabis community, because everybody wanted to wait for 2016 because the Marijuana Policy Project was coming. And you know, I told Dennis, well, you can file an initiative or you cannot. Regardless, I'm going to continue with Safer Arizona and get these shirts out to people and get people protesting. And at that point in time, he was going to call his campaign Pathway to Legalization. And so we thought about it, and then we had eventually come to the consensus that we're going to merge together, file the initiative, and call it Safer Arizona.